everyone, welcome to Plotting and Scheming. I'm here with Gabriela Martins, who is the upcoming debut author of Like a Love Song. And I'll let Gabriela introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Gabriela Martins here. My debut, Like a Love Song, is about this Brazilian teen pop idol who finds herself in a really tough spot after she's dumped, and it's live streamed, and she becomes this meme. So her PR agency has a plan, and that involves getting a fake boyfriend. Then things just sort of happen from there.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I'm really looking forward to it. So my first question for you, okay, so you said she kind of turns into a meme because of her breakup. What real life meme would you say is like most realistic to the meme that she turns into?
So although she was not really inspired by this artist, I think if we look at how Taylor Swift was treated by the media, and like until 1989, which was, when she kind of shifted the script, and up until that point, and I'm showing my age a little bit, but I remember I grew up with the media ridiculing Taylor Swift for dating around.
Oh yeah,
and sure. I was like, I've dated more people than her, like, how is it that bad, so I remember that made this impact on me, how people were constantly making fun of this girl, because at that point, like, she was a teenager as well, or a very young adult, for having relationships. And I think the media is especially cruel to women, and of course women of color are treated worse, for just doing things that are normal, especially for teenage girls. So yeah, I think I needed to write a little bit about it.
Cool. That's really great to have that context of like the type of situation that your main character is in with that. Because yeah, I was around during that time, just like thinking about like the way Taylor Swift was treated. It's just like she's just dating people, but people are just kind of like treating her so badly, like, how dare you have relationships? And just kind of like judging her because she was in the public eye.
Exactly. And to be fair, I do think there's plenty of valid criticism for Taylor Swift, but dating people is not it.
Yeah.
Very true. And again, I do think that the narrative has shifted a little, but not, entirely. It's different when, Olivia Rodrigo, she owns it. She owns the drama narrative. Then it's more difficult for people to make fun of her for it. But when she had first started, and everybody knows what happened at this point, she was still, people, and by people I mean like tabloids and the internet and much older folks that shouldn't care, they still try to put her in this position of a hysterical teenager.
Yeah.
And that, if you really look at it, this narrative of vilifying women for having feelings, we can trace it back to, Britney Spears, when we were children, and, a myriad of number of pop stars before that as well. There's this entitlement to the private life of these women, and sometimes these girls, because Britney was also a teenager when she first started. And, this entitlement for their private lives, it doesn't allow them to make any kind of mistake and really just live, because, like, being dumped is not a mistake. It's something that happens. I mean, I don't know anyone who's never been dumped. So yeah, I think that the media plays a really horrible part in all of this, and it's gotten better, but not nearly as much as it should have.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm interested to see how your book portrays how narratives have changed since like the Britney Spears and like the Amanda Bynes years, because it was so brutal on them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with social media, I feel like it's in some ways it's gotten worse, but then in some ways people are examining like how horrible it was, what happened to like Britney and Amanda and Lindsay. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how that plays out in your book. That's super exciting. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope I make it justice, because, you know, it's still a very light narrative. I like to touch on topics that are a little bit deeper, but there's only so much that you can only go, you know, so much into it and still have it be, you know, like a fun, upbeat book. So yeah, let's see if I accomplished touching on that topic. I don't know. I'll let you tell me after you read
it. I'm so excited to check it out. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you, okay, so what first got you interested in becoming a writer? Like, were you writing since you were a small kid? And then what were your influences growing up?
All right. So like how much time do we have? Like, do you want the Cliff Notes version of it, or like, I don't know. I wasn't around many books growing up because my mom, she was someone who didn't have a lot of opportunities. And, you know, she dropped out of school when she was still in middle school. So I didn't have books growing up. I can't relate to those experiences of others who talk about like, oh yeah, I read this and that when I was like, I don't know who the middle grade and children's authors were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I genuinely don't know because I didn't have access to this. But after we were forced to move into my grandmother's house again, my grandma, she at one point in her life, she worked with adult literacy. And so she had some books, and they were random, very old editions. So she had 2 books that were very beautiful, like aesthetically beautiful and very old editions. That was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Awesome. And I was like 9, so I was not old enough to be reading any of these books, but I tried. I tried. And I did not understand a thing.
Yeah.
So Brave New World opens with, you know, basically you get the 101 of the world with these students who are visiting the factory of babies, basically. And I had no idea what was going on. I remember reading it again and again, and I was like,
what is this?
I felt so lost.
Yeah.
But I really liked everything about those 2 books. Like the font, the cover, and, you know, you add to that the fact that in Brazil hardcovers are super uncommon, and they were hardcovers. So I was in love with those books, and I just tried to keep reading them every year until I started understanding a little bit more each time. And when I was like 11, I found out about fanfic, and then there is some cat fur in my mouth.
Oh yeah.
And then I started writing fanfic, and, you know, I started studying English around that time.
What kind of fanfic did you write?
Well, I started with the Turf, you know, that series that shall not be named. And
oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Very quickly though, I found out that on Orkut, which is this like Brazilian social media forum-ish from like 15 years ago or more, that's not on anymore, thank God, probably for the best. And there was a huge community there for writing fanfic about bands.
Cool. That sounds fun. I love that.
Yeah, and you know, between Like a Love Song and Bad at Love, my 2022 sophomore book, I really like music as a backdrop to, you know, fiction. So I just started obsessively writing fanfic about bands. That was like when I found out, and that was very different because nobody talked about fanfic, right? It was the best kept secret. Nobody knew anything about it, much less the people involved.
Right.
So it was this very safe place for me to just be creative. And you know, when I was like around 15, I started feeling more comfortable with my English speaking skills and English writing. And that's when I kind of figured out that every TV show I watched, there was a fandom for it. So I wrote about everything I watched, just every single thing. I remember watching this random movie and finding out that there were like 15 fanfics for it, and I was like, I hate the ending, so I'm gonna write my ending. And you know, like nobody would comment on it because it was so niche, but I was like so yeah, then I tried for a very long time to get into traditionally published books.
Okay.
I mean, I was into them to try to get my books published. It was like 10 years of querying until eventually it worked out. And then, you know, things just started happening super fast. I signed with my agent in December 2019. And then in May, I had an offer for my first book for Like a Love Song of 2020.
Yeah.
And then it was like, we got the offer in May, we signed the contract in August. And I think in October, we already had the cover.
Wow.
And for an August release. Yeah. So like very, like, are you keeping up? Like it's gotta be fun. So
just to go back a little bit, like you said, you were querying for 10 years before that, though?
Yeah.
So what were you querying? Like, what were the first things that you were like, okay, I'm going to send this out to agents? How many books did you write before Like a Love Song?
I wrote 6 books. I mean, I wrote more, to be fair, but I queried 6 books. Yeah. I wrote 10, I think. And I queried these 6 other books. The first one was a dystopia involving vampires, werewolves, and zombies. And you know what? It wasn't even ironic. It was this, you know, political thriller.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of interest in that. Like, I wonder why. Such so upmarket. But yeah, I didn't. I used to write like everything. I wrote like a mystery that was like thriller-ish. I wrote a lot of dark fantasy, and Like a Love Song was the first rom-com I wrote.
Oh, cool! First one you ever wrote. Yeah, I think I was watching an interview with you, and you were kind of talking about the fact that you used to write like a lot of dark stuff, and then you went through a dark period, and you're just like, let me just write a rom-com instead of focusing on this dark stuff. So I thought that was really interesting because like I write contemporary romance, but it's like when I was younger, I would write the darkest things possible, and I don't know why I did that. It was just like, well, Courtney Summers was kind of like my main inspiration growing up, like the author of Sadie. So that's kind of like where I kind of got my ideas of like, oh, I need to write about all of this dark things, but I'm just like, this doesn't make me feel good. I don't really like this that much. So yeah, that's interesting.
I think we try to, just like we try to channel things to like feed us, we also try to channel those things out, and it can be so healing to write about darker things as a way of processing things that have happened to us, trauma, and so on. But I think that you have to be at a particularly bright moment to do that. And I wasn't when I started writing like a love song. I definitely would like to write darker stuff in the future, but I feel much more stable and just happy now than I was back then. When I was writing like a love song, I was in a very strongly depressed moment. I was having like a very depressive episode, and that was when my mom was diagnosed with a very serious illness. So it was like just this moment where I don't think, well, I tried very hard to write stuff that was, you know, what I was used to, but I don't think you can if you're not feeling a little healthier, because it can take a lot.
Yeah, it can be really exhausting. And like, I kind of had to pivot to mental health awareness being the theme of my story, kind of like actually talking about like, hey, if you're feeling bad, like how can you get out of this, and how can you find professional help and help from friends, instead of it just being like, this was dark at the end, because it's a little bit too much for me. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that you might be considering in the future, like going back into that if you feel ready, because I would love to see lots of different things from you. Yeah. So, okay, I want to get back to your journey. So you said you basically, you had a really fast journey of like, after those 10 years and all of those books that you went through, then when you got an agent, it was just kind of like, you got an agent, you found a book deal, and then you were kind of like off to the races very quickly. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your editing process. So when you first got your agent, how many rounds of edits did you do? And then when you went to a publisher, what was the editing process like?
So I have a very editorial agent. She used to be an editor for Random House for like 10 years before she left it to be an agent. So my first, when Chelsea offered on the call, she was like, you know, like, I just see you like heightening some of the stuff that is already there, and then we're gonna go and sub. I was like, oh, cool, you know, like, sounds fair. The other two operating agents were like, we're gonna go and sub immediately. So that felt like, I felt like my story was close to being ready. And then her first edit letter was 7 pages long, single spaced, and her the file had, between, you know, like changes, track changes, and comments, it had almost 5,000 comments. And that was her being like, this is almost ready. So she made me work super hard, and I'm very thankful for it, because she looks at details and things that I just truly wouldn't think of. And yeah, it was very good. Like, to give you an example of the type of thing that we worked on revision, there are 2 events in, this is more cat hair. Okay, are we good now? Think so. All right. There are 2 events that are very fancy, you know, that my main character goes to. And in one of them, I was like, so yeah, there's like finger food. And my agent was like, finger food? What is finger food? No, we can't have that. Finger food. So she sent me 2 PDFs of buffet lists of some gourmet, very high-end Los Angeles finger food caterers. Sorry. So I had to study those and stick to a theme. But this is the kind of thing that when my editor read my book, she was like, I love how attentive to detail you are. And I was like, I'm really not, but my agent is. So we edited for 5 months. Okay. And that was 4 drafts. We are So putting your phone on silent mode doesn't work if it's like on the computer.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's my mom, you know, and Brazilian moms, if you don't answer them, they think that you were dying somewhere, you know, like you got kidnapped. So I'm just going to tell her that I'm busy right now.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, just so she knows that, oh, you know what? She's driving. She's not going to see my text. Let's just hope she doesn't call me again.
Yeah, no problem. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, so yeah, it was basically 4 drafts, 5 months.
Okay.
And I worked very hard and she worked very hard. But when we sold the book, I only had 1 round of minor edits and it went to line edits.
Wow.
So it really paid off to work on it so much, because then, you know, after that with my editor, it was just like super smooth.
That's really interesting to hear. I've talked to a couple authors now about their process and with like their agent and then going on sub, and that's the quickest process I've heard with a editor in publishing. And I think, yeah, like you said, it pays off if you're working with your agent beforehand and then you go in and you're ready to go. Like, that sounds amazing. That's really cool to hear.
It was amazing. Yeah. And I am lucky because both my agent and my editor, they didn't want to change the story. They just wanted to make it more me. That's what they would say, you know? And I think that's really cool because, you know, there are parts of my book in which the characters talk in Portuguese, and there's Brazilian food, and there are aspects of the story that I was afraid that would be cut or, you know, strongly suggested to go. And those things were absolutely never an issue. It was never even brought up by my agent or my editor. In fact, I remember this one thing that when I was editing it with Chelsea, with my agent, so Brazilian teens, girls especially, they tend to be a little, well, we are very touchy in general, right? So we will touch our friends, both in a good way, and when we are teenagers, in an aggressive way also. There is, you know, a whole lot of history into why we are the way we are. But, you know, play slapping and pushing, and this is very common. And I remember Chelsea at one point, she was like, these 2 Brazilian girls are being super violent with each other in a playful way. I'm not telling you to change it, but I want you to not explain necessarily, but acknowledge it to the American audience. You know, and I had them have a conversation about it, and Chelsea was like, that's it. So I really liked that as well, that they were not trying to make it less Brazilian, less queer. They were just like, yeah, we just want to write more things.
It's okay, no worries.
Mãe, eu tô fazendo uma entrevista, não posso falar agora. Beijo, tchau. She was like, I am so sorry. I did not know. I am so sorry. So
that's really sweet. Okay, so in regards to what you were just talking about, I was talking to Johnny Garza Villa, who wrote 1,500 Miles from the Sun a couple of weeks ago, about Chicago culture and Mexican culture, Latin culture that he's put in, that they put into their book. And there's just like, it's not really explained. Like for you, did you feel like, were you able to like put language stuff in there? I know you're a linguist as well. So did you have a lot of like language stuff that you put in there, or I'm just curious to hear.
Yeah, I did. There's definitely instances where characters talk in Portuguese and different accents as well. And one instance where one character talks in Spanish too. And I think that this can be different for different authors. But for me personally, I think it's important to always contextualize, because I have a conversation in my book. I had two. One was cut, but not because it was in Portuguese. It was just cut because we ended up tightening the end. But there's this whole conversation between the main character and her grandmother. Her grandmother doesn't really speak English, so she's basically like just talking in Portuguese and trying to sneak some English words there. And I think that I actually sent that to several American friends who did not speak Portuguese, who did not speak Spanish, and was like, okay, what do you understand from this? You don't need to understand every single word, but the context needs to tell you more or less what's going on.
Right.
And I think that's...
Yeah.
I think that this is something we can do to put the reader, to integrate the reader a little bit more. So I think it's perfectly fine to just mention names of food, for example, that your reader won't understand, but I think it will immerse them if you explain what that is about. And that explanation is not like using italics, it's not using parentheses to go into detail. It's a couple of keywords that can make you more grounded. And I think that this is, I don't think that this is accommodating of the American audience or whatever. I think that this is a linguistic tool. You know, this is something that I would have appreciated if more American authors had done when I was a teen and starting to read in English without much of a clue of what the United States was like. So I remember reading these books that mentioned in passing things like SATs. I had no idea what an SAT was. This doesn't exist in here. And even food that would be mentioned, and I would be bewildered. I was like, okay, I need to put this book down and go on Google because I have no idea what you're talking about. So I didn't want to take anyone out of the book the way I always felt when reading, as English is my second language. So I tried to make a conscious linguistic effort to making the text accessible.
That's really interesting. And that's a very unique perspective that I'm hearing, because honestly, I feel like when people of color are putting their kind of like culture into books, it's kind of like people are just like, oh, well, I have to look that up, or that's going to be difficult for that person to look up. But considering that you as a non-American had to look up all of these different American things, I feel like that's pretty reasonable for to ask of anyone else reading your book who happens to not be from Brazil. So I think that's really interesting and cool. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. So I just want to add that I do think it's fair for people writing about their cultures to not want to explain.
Yeah.
I think it's fair if you just mention it without any context, without any contextualization, without any clues, without any keywords. I think that's fair. It was just important for me, from where I was coming from, to make this textually accessible, especially because I am writing for teens, and I know as a teen what it's like to read a book and not understand what's going on. Yeah. From like these cultural points of view, there were a lot of things I started to understand the American educational system when I was like 25, 26, and I had been writing in English for a very long time. But I thought that, like in Brazil, they had fixed classes. So like in Brazil, you are in the same group of around 30 people from first grade to the last year of high school. It was really weird for me to find out that, you know, teens just go to different classrooms and kind of have classes with everyone, because that's not what we do here. Here, teachers change classrooms. Teachers go to different classrooms, and 3 to 7 groups, depending on how big the school is, they are always in their classrooms. That's how I went to school, and however school is here. So yeah, things like that were very difficult for me to understand. There are all the obvious challenges of getting your book published as an international author, but there are also these added kind of invisible challenges of like, I am not in this culture. And, you know, I'm going to try to contextualize it for you all so you understand where I'm coming from. But this is not my culture. I did not grow up in the US. I am not in the US. So there's this, yeah, there's this process.
Yeah, that's, again, like, I really love that perspective, because it just kind of shows, like, I love that international aspect of, like, the States is not the center of the world. We don't have to, like, it's not like, oh, everything should just be automatically known to everyone else outside of these states. Like, I'm from Canada, so we basically have assimilated most of the state's culture. It's kind of just like anything from the States we kind of like relate to, and it's not that hard to see any of the minor differences. But like, I feel like it's time for other cultures to kind of like be able to have that same chance of just like, hey, you can do the research. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe for people in the States and like also in Canada to be like, hey, like, let's do a little more describing, because it's like, this isn't just a universal experience for everyone. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I did actually want to ask you a little bit about the writing community, and kind of like how you first got into, I don't know. So I first heard about you through Pitch Wars when I submitted my manuscript to you in Pitch Wars last fall. And I only heard about Pitch Wars from like Tomi Adeyemi, and like I was listening to some podcasts where she was talking about Pitch Wars with like Sarah Inney. And that's how I first got into it. And then I was like, oh my God, you and Adiba, you sound great. I'm so excited to like submit my work to you. And I think I didn't even end up submitting my work to you. And like, it was JL and Emily Golden who like sent it over to you. And then you guys said you were interested, which was really cool, because I was like, oh, I really want to submit to them. But I was like looking at manuscript wish lists like really carefully. But you guys were interested, and you gave me some great feedback, even though I wasn't chosen as the final mentor. But I'm interested how you got into Pitch Wars and like how you first connected with Adiba.
So Adiba is one of my favorite people in the world, right? She's my bestie. We would absolutely wear friendship bracelets if we were younger. I mean, she probably wouldn't, but I would. We met through Priyanka Taslim, who is another amazing person and fantastic author. So that was circa 2016, I think. So it's funny because now both Adiba and I have, you know, these books out, or in my case, like contracted at least, and they are all rom-coms. But when Adiba and I started talking, she was querying a literary novel, and I was querying, you know, dark fantasy. So we were in very different parts of our journey. And so I think that Adiba and Pri were already friends, but then I met Pri because we were both trying to get into Pitch Wars, and none of us did. And then, you know, like Adiba was just always in Pri's replies, and so was I on Twitter. And then I did something that I used to do a lot, which was like, just being like, hi, like, what's up? Like, let's talk. And Adiba was like, wow, that's really weird. Okay. Because she's not like that. Yeah. And I think I just basically cornered her into being my best friend. And it's worked out great for us. I really think that we complete each other because we are so different in our behaviors, but on the inside, like our principles, the things that are most important to us, it's essentially the same thing. So we get along really well, and we kind of So she got some good news that I can talk about recently, and I sent her a video of me crying, just like, crying so much. I was like, I need to show you like how emotional I am because like I'm so happy for you. It was just like tears and tears and tears, and my eyes were red. And she was like, Gabby, it's so funny. Like I get happier for her stuff than she does sometimes. Sometimes she's like, oh yeah, this happened. And I'm like, wait.
Gotta process.
So it's really, I don't know if I would have settled as nicely in this community if I didn't have someone who was like a sister to me.
Yeah.
And that was, and I'll be honest, the fact that she did it all before me. So, you know, agent, book deal, everything was around the ear before me and everything. It was really good because then I would be like, okay, so what do I expect? What's the process here? So she really guided me through it. And, you know, my mom knows about Adiba and is always like, you know, let me tell you something funny about that happened recently. So I don't live with my parents. I don't live with my mom, but my mom's fiance was traveling recently and I spent the weekend at my mom's. And when I am with her, I basically like, I don't have my phone with me. I'm just like all the time with her. And then, you know, we were having lunch on like Sunday and she was like, is Adiba okay? And I'm like, well, I assume so. I haven't talked to her this weekend. And my mom was like, you have to. Does she know you're here? She's going to be worried. I'm like, no, relax. I told her I was coming over. So she knew I would not be super active online. And she was like, oh my God, Adiba is going to be upset with me because I am taking your quality time together. Like, oh my God. Adiba's going to be upset. And I was like, Adiba, so look what my mom's worried with. And, you know, she was like, yeah, just so your mom know, I'm not upset with her. And I was like, yeah, I had a feeling you would say that. But I still told my mom. And she was like, yeah, but just text her, you know, while you're here. Just like, hi, how are you? How was your day? Just like a little bit, just so she doesn't think I'm stealing you from her. I was like, okay, mom.
That's
okay,
adorable.
Weirdo.
That's
yeah,
so cute. Like making those special like writer friendships, I feel like is super essential. And like you said that you and Adiba, you didn't get into pitch wars, but then you ended up becoming mentors. So like what kind of influence do you guys to apply and do that?
Yeah, so Adiba also tried and didn't get in. We all failed. I think that not getting in pitch wars was one of the best things that happened to me because I ended up finding all these amazing people and just finding my voice, because also that was a time when I think I was, I had tried with the Brazilian story, but I was still afraid of talking about my culture, you know? And I just started getting so much closer to all of these people who are unapologetically telling their stories. And that was very encouraging and, you know, good. Actually, so Adiba and we selected a mentee and we are still mentoring her because some personal things happened to her. And we had this conversation where it was like, look, if it's very important for you to make it to the agent round, you were potentially looking into burnout because you are not okay at this moment. And it's a lot of work. It's not just, you know, implementing our suggestions. It's going to be, you know, the most stressful week of your life, probably. And if you choose not to be on the list, right? That doesn't mean you're not going to get published. We didn't get in. We were not in the showcase.
Yeah.
And we are very happy with our agents and our book deals. So we had this very frank conversation with her, and she ended up not choosing not to participate as well.
Mhm.
And I think that's important to keep in mind about every big thing, like be it Pitch Wars or PitMed or DiviPit. All of these things are very glamorous. They are great opportunities, but they are so not the only way to get published.
Exactly.
Agents still, well, that agents still go through their slush file. That's part of their job, and I think that sometimes we put this incredibly heavy expectation on ourselves to hit the marks with these events, and they can be very good because it's putting the spotlight on you, but they're not the only way. I remember when I didn't get in and Pri didn't get in the Pitch Wars that year. We had a friend who did, and she ended up not getting any agents requests from the showcase round. Her writing is amazing, but for a number of reasons that didn't happen. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's important to keep in mind that there are 1,000 possible paths to publication, and they're all valid.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm so glad that you described that in that way, because of the fact that, like, I love the fact that even though you guys didn't get in, you're just like, we still want to help other writers, and this is still a great way to do that, which I think is amazing. And yeah, I've applied, like, the first mentor contest I applied to was Pitch Wars, so I was just happy to get a request. I was kind of flabbergasted. And then I did AMM, didn't get in. RevPit, I didn't get in. Write Mentor, I didn't get in. And then after that, that's when I got my my offer. So yeah, it was just kind of like, I was thinking like, oh, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this without having a official mentor to help me. But I am friends with Louisa Oname, who wrote Like Home.
Louisa, she's one of my favorite people too. You have great friends.
Yeah, she's wonderful, and she actually read the first couple drafts of my novel and helped me get query ready. And I just kind of reached out to her because I happened to know her before that. But it's just like making that community of people who can help you out, whether it be like beta CPs, and then mentorship contests. Is just like there's only a select number of positions to get into, so you have to kind of like get your supports and then also be your own mentor. You have to not think like, oh, I need someone who's going to guide me. You just kind of like have to do your research, read your craft books, watch videos, and do all of that stuff yourself. And you can still do all of the things that people in mentorship programs are doing, and get yourself to the place where you get ahead and you are able to query and get some interest from agents. So yeah, thank you for sharing that experience. And like, that's really cool to hear. So
yeah. I want to add, sorry, Brazilians interrupt people a lot. That's
no, I was on
for me not to do that when I am talking in English with people. Adiba was also in Avengers of Color, the mentorship program that was created. That was created by Farida, and she is just such an incredible mentor. She has 2 mentees that she still follows, and when we were going over our Pitch Wars list, there was this one story where she was like, I need to work with this person as well. Like it was someone who needed a lot more time than we could with Pitch Wars, and she was like, Gabby, do you mind if I reach out to them like personally and be like, hey, want to be my mentee? And I was like, no, of course not. And she is still working with this person as well. So there are a lot of opportunities and chances for mentorship, even outside the most common ones.
Exactly.
And it's so much fun, the only reason I'm not like randomly mentoring people right now is because I have so many deadlines.
Of course, yeah.
Like,
I don't know how anyone does mentoring while they're like getting ready to like get published, and I'm just like, and you're doing it for free too. I'm just like, you guys are amazing.
Yeah,
like
yeah. It's like Adiba is someone I really admire for that, because she has basically always mentored people in different programs and styles, and I think that's really cool. Like really awesome.
Yeah.
And she helps her friends too, you know, like we always give each other feedback, so that's cool too.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I really love about this community. Like like literally a year ago, I kind of just like knew nothing, and I'm just like, oh my god, you and like Adiba seem so cool, and I would like love to work with you. And like the fact that you guys gave me feedback, it really made a difference for me. So yeah, again, I just really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm gonna let you go soon. I just wanted to ask you, what's something good you read recently? You mentioned Farida, so like Ace of Spades, like I'm so looking forward to that. But if there's anything else? Oh my god, you got the hardcover.
Yeah, this is Ace of Spades. Like I take this jacket off to read because it's a little uncomfortable, but it's Ace of Spades. It has like this beautiful, you can kind of see it. There's like an Ace of Spades here, yeah, with her initials FAI.
Cool.
So yeah, I am reading Ace of Spades and I am loving it. Farida is a master storyteller. It's every page there's a turn and something that makes you go like, she is incredible. And recently I've also read and loved Made in Korea. Like I remember like just reading it and being like, I love them, you know. So this is the last book I read that I really loved, and now Ace of Spades. So really this year has some amazing debuts. I will be broke forever. I'm gonna spend all of my advance money on books, which is the way the world should be.
True enough. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I just wanted to say that Like a Love Song, it's going to be out on August 3rd, right?
Yes, okay. It is.
So please order now.
Ebook, yes, please. Let me look at the camera like real quick, like just buy my book. I mean, nice. It's going to be out in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. So it's going to be very exciting.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to it because that pop star type of thing, like I'm actually, my book I'm working on now is about like basically like a mix between like Zayn Malik and Harry Styles type of thing, where he like, gets famous but like off of YouTube. And it's like a companion novel to like my first book about like a Black ballet dancer, and her love interest like wrote her a song, and that's the song that becomes popular, and then it becomes famous. So
that's awesome. Best of luck with it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Gabby, thank you so much for meeting with me again today, and this has been wonderful.
Thank you, Maya.
Yeah, thank you again. I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.